Lawyers as changemakers. In this section, I'm going to chat to you about lawyers who are changing the legal system in the hope that you might want to be one of them. So I need to tell you about the Integrative Law Movement. It's an international movement in law with many names and many models. And really, integrative law is just the term that's given to this movement, which involves thousands of lawyers and people associated with the legal system in some way or another, who are all working around the world to design people-centric systems in the law. There are at least 50 areas within the integrative law movement that I could tell you about. The most shocking thing is that chances are that you won't have heard of about 80 or 90% of them. Why? Well, I think it's because law schools haven't kept up. If you're studying law, you may be at a good law school, but the problem is that things are changing really fast. So just as you know that cell phones are becoming outdated every 3 to 5 years, the tech doesn't even work with the new apps that are coming out. Well, from what I can see, law schools don't change their syllabus every few years, so they don't include what's happening now. In fact, in many law schools, they're still teaching law pretty much the same way they did 100 years ago. Luckily, there's this great thing called the internet, so you actually don't need a professor to tell you about this stuff. You can get online and teach yourself. So some of these areas are conflict coaching, collaborative law, conscious contracts, community law, drug courts, therapeutic jurisprudence, proactive law, preventative law, values-based contracts, holistic litigation, transformative mediation. Those are just a few of the terms that you can look at. Like I said, there's more than about 50 areas of law. And all of these words together, all of these different things, all make up the integrative law movement. But maybe you're still a bit confused. So another way of explaining the integrative law movement is this great definition given by a lawyer who I had the privilege of meeting in San Francisco a couple of years ago. Her name is Linda Alvarez. Linda writes, "Integrative law is a new wave of legal practices that are being developed and implemented all over the globe to serve the same needs and purposes as the conventional legal system, but to do so in a way that is far more likely to generate productive outcomes, to heal broken relationships, and address not only the conflict, but also deal effectively with the conditions that gave rise to the conflict, and thus turning conflict into an opportunity to co-create a better world for all." Another lawyer explains it by saying that integrative law is a context for law, more of a lens than an actual practice area. So it's like putting on 3D glasses because your perception of the world changes. The integrative law glasses have to do with seeing the legal system as an interconnected system of human beings. In August 2013, an article was published in the American Bar Journal, and the article was called, "Is the Integrative Law Movement the Next Huge Wave for the Legal Profession?" And it set out this description of integrative law. "Unlike traditional law practice, which is often competitive and aggressive, integrative lawyers are trying to simultaneously make a difference in the world, earn a good living, and lead satisfying personal lives." According to Pauline Tesler, director of the Integrative Law Institute, integrative law is the umbrella term for a variety of vectors that have become more widely known in the past few years. The movement encompasses some forms of mediation, restorative justice, collaborative practice, and even elements of positive psychology and social neuroscience. So, if you want the best guide, actually, to all of the coolest things that lawyers are doing to change the world, then you need to get this book, Lawyers as Changemakers. I can't sing the praises of this book highly enough. There are hundreds of stories in here that will make you weep and smile and exclaim, and will, I'm sure, some of them, ignite something inside you. I consider it such a privilege to call Kim Wright my friend and mentor. And when I found her online in 2012, I think, I suddenly realized that the stuff I was blogging about, and I had a readership of about 10 people, it was actually important enough that these same things were being written about by Kim and being published by the American Bar Association. in her first book, Lawyers as Peacemakers, and now in the second, Lawyers as Changemakers. So Kim and I schemed for her to get to South Africa in 2012 so that we could start some projects together. Kim writes in the book, "What is your part of transforming the world? If litigation is what makes your soul sing, do it where you will make the most difference. Fight the bad guys, whoever they are in your value system. If you prefer to make peace, do that too. Do what is true to your heart. But do something that matters to you and to the planet. It doesn't have to be huge. But change is urgent. It is time to wake up. This is why we were born. This is why you went to law school. The world needs saving, and you're the one." So some elements that are common to integrative lawyers are these. Firstly, having a mindfulness or reflective practice. And this is discussed in the book, so it can be a very wide range of things that lawyers do, but all lawyers who call themselves integrative lawyers tend to have some practice that helps them become more aware of themselves, more reflective, to think more deeply about what's going on underneath things. Secondly, they are interested in integrity, very important to them, their purpose and their values. Thirdly, integrative lawyers are systems thinkers, so they always think about how different systems interact and think of things holistically. And finally, integrative lawyers are harbingers of a new consciousness, so they think about things differently. One of the hardest things for integrative lawyers is when they find themselves fighting against a system, becoming exhausted, and it seems like nothing is changing. Because let's face it, there are certain and many parts of the legal system which are really broken and really toxic. So you may find yourself working with a massive court load, too many cases that you can even hear, your health is breaking down, and this is actually something that happened to a judge that I know in Europe. She just started getting migraines that were debilitating to the point she could no longer work. And a lot of it was due to her stress and being given more cases than she even had time to read. And her instructions were to basically read the first few pages that were given to her for each case and the last few, and then just make a guess. And on a balance of probabilities, hope you get it right. So she found that enormously taxing and suffered all these health problems as a result. It's going to be important for you to consider where in the system you want to work and are capable of working. So are you going to work within existing court systems and legal systems and law firms, or do you need to work outside of them, developing new ones? And in the next section, I'll talk a little bit more about systems change. One example is a woman called Michelle Crosby, who's a US lawyer and entrepreneur who created a startup called Weavors that assists people to do their own divorces online and not spend all the money they have left on divorce lawyers. So this is what she says. For years, I tried to work completely within the system. I tried running a compassionate solo practice. I joined a collaborative law group. I became a mediator, and each effort was successful in its own way. But it wasn't until I got further out of the system by starting a company called Weavors, dedicated to turning every divorce amicable, that I could see things clearly. Change in the divorce industry has been too focused on the business of divorce, and what we need is a movement. Buckminster Fuller is an extraordinary man, a great thinker, a man who was way, way, way ahead of his times. He was working in the 60s and 70s with things that are only coming to life now in the world. And he said you can never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So if you want to know more about the integrative law movement, about changing the law, you need to look at some of these books: Transforming Practices, Practicing Law in the Sharing Economy, Practicing Therapeutic Jurisprudence, The Happy Lawyer, Lawyers as Peacemakers. There are a huge number of books you can look at, but most of all, you need to buy Lawyers as Changemakers, because that book alone will give you the edge in creating a life you love in the law like no other book can do.